rocket science. I'm over here playing with this one.
You guys ready?
You can tell me why.
I feel like whenever I ask somebody, it
Oh.
becomes very
Well,
obvious.
find that.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the July 20th Board of Education meeting. We're going to start off with the fiscal organizational meeting tonight and then move into the regular meeting. Mrs. Ertel, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Dashner,
I am here.
Mr. Kennedy,
Here.
Mr. Schweigler,
Here?
I am here, Mr. Abate,
Here.
Ms. Younkless Pierce,
Here.
Mr. Leftwich. Not here.
Okay, 6 present, that we do have a quorum, and Mr. Leftwich did inform us he was not going to be here tonight. He's on vacation somewhere in the Midwest doing a history tour. If you can please
Such a
rise.
teacher.
You can please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That brings up our first opportunity, fiscal organizational meeting. Item 3 is our bank depositories. We have the same 12 banks listed as we typically have on there. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve the 12 listed bank depositories.
I'll second.
Okay, that was moved by Mr. Kennedy and supported by Mr. Abate. Ms. Ertel, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Schweigler,
Yes.
Mr. Dashner,
Yes.
I vote yes, Mr. Abate,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
and Ms. Younkless Pierce.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 6-0. The board law firms, we are maintaining our relationship with both Truen Law Firm and Miller Johnson, who was formerly Lusk Albertson. I'll entertain a motion to accept our 2 law firms for another year.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, moved by Mr. Attell, supported by Mr. Kennedy. Can we call the roll again, please?
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Abate,
Yes.
Mr. Dashner,
Yes.
Ms. Younkless Pierce,
Yes.
Mr. Schweigler,
Yes.
I vote yes.
Okay, up next is our independent auditor. We have Plant Moran, who's going to propose to stay on for another year to be our auditor. I'll entertain a motion for that.
So moved.
Support?
Okay, moved by Mr. Kennedy, support by Mr. Abate. Can we call the roll again, please?
Mr. Abate,
Yes.
Mr. Dashner,
Yes.
Ms. Younkless Pierce,
Yes.
Mr. Schweigler,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
Okay, motion passes 6-0. And then finally, we have item 6, which is our purchasing cooperatives. This is going through the Oakland County Schools Intermediate District that allows us to multiply our purchasing power. And I'll accept a motion for this.
So moved.
Support?
Okay, moved by Mr. Kennedy and supported by Mr. Schweigler. Can we call the roll, please?
Yes. Ms. Younkless Pierce,
Yes.
Mr. Dashner,
I vote yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Abate,
Yes.
Mr. Schweigler,
Yes.
Okay, that passes 6-0 as well. So that completes our fiscal organization priorities or duties. Brings us to our regular meeting, and our first item up for that is public comment. Is there anyone here wishing to make public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will go on to item 8, approval of the agenda. Anyone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by Mrs. Younkless Pierce and supported by Mr. Abate. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0. Okay, up next, we have approval of meeting minutes. We have both the June 22nd and the June 28th regular and special meeting minutes to approve.
I'll move to approve the minutes for June 22nd, regular meeting, and June 28th, special meeting.
Support.
Okay, moved by Mr. Kennedy, support by Ms. Ertel. Any discussion or comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0. Okay, up next, we have approval of bills. Ms. Witt? Or, sorry, you don't normally present that.
I'll move to approve the June 2021 wires and ACH transactions, the June 2021 revenue report, and the July 2021 bond run.
Thank you. Do we have a second for that?
Second that.
Okay. So it was moved by Mr. Schwegler, supported by Mr. Abate. Any comments, questions? Okay, Mr. Attell, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Ms. Younkless Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Dashner?
I vote yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Abate?
Yes.
And Mr. Schwegler?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Item number 11, recommendation for hire. Mr. Toth?
Thank you. The hiring of Jackie Burry as the principal of Centennial Middle School in May created a vacancy for an assistant principal at Centennial and Millennium. The committee interviewed select candidates, and the district administrative team is recommending Ms. Christina Sabrario as the next assistant principal at Centennial and Millennium Middle Schools. The recommended action is to approve the hiring of Christina Sabrario as the assistant principal at CMS and MMS as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Toth. Would someone like to make a motion?
I would. I'll happily make the motion to approve the hiring of Christina Sabrario to be the assistant principal at Millennium and Centennial.
I'll support.
Dang it. I wanted to do one of them.
I'm sorry, Jenny.
We can call it a tie. Any comments? Okay, Mr. Attell, can you call the roll, please?
I vote yes. Mr. Abate?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
I'll vote yes.
Mr. Dashner?
I vote yes.
Mr. Schwegler?
Yes.
Ms. Younkless Pierce?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Congratulations, Ms. Sabar.
Thank you, everybody, for your time this evening. Thank you to Central Admin, to the board. Really looking forward to this next opportunity. I've enjoyed my time teaching, and I'm really looking forward to serving the district in this new capacity. I'm here with my family tonight. The little girl screaming in the background is my daughter, Claire. My husband is holding her, Craig, and my son, Graham. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations. Okay, next up is item number 12, acceptance of gift.
All right. CMS Energy donated a monetary gift of $450 for the use by the South Lyon East High School Robotics Team 3641 for supplies, materials, travel, food, etc. And our recommended action is to accept the gift in accordance with Policy 7003.
Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I
I'll
move
make-
to accept the gift in accordance with policy 7003.
I'll support.
Okay, moved by Mr. Attell, supported by Mr. Kennedy. Any questions? Okay, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kennedy?
I vote yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Schwegler?
Yes.
Mr. Dashner?
I vote yes.
Mr. Abate?
Yes.
Ms. Younkless Pierce?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 6-0. That brings us to our section B, information and inquiry section. We have up first for administration, legislation, Superintendent Archibald. Is there anything to report there?
Just one quick comment that's happened in the last week or so. The school aid budget was passed and signed into law on July 13th. It is a historic budget for schools, as you may be aware. The per pupil foundation allowance for our district in particular increased from $8,111 to $8,700. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank our state senators and representatives for their support of this historic increase, as well as our governor and for the investment in our schools. So I want to share that with the public.
Definitely good news. CETA comments, Ms. Kudla?
Yes, the pupil accounting manual has a new piece to it that requires us to maintain a list of board-approved middle and high school courses. You approve every course as we adopt it as a district, but we have to be able to provide the date for each one of those. So what we will be doing is bringing the entire course catalog offer each middle school and each high school to you at the August meeting for approval. Again, you've approved the courses within it. We have to add a sentence for anything we're offering virtually, just to say that it will be offered both in person and in a virtual setting. So I'll be making some slight adjustments to things so that the proper courses state that, and then we'll bring that to you for information and for approval in August, so that we've got that ready to go for people accounting for next school year in case we are audited on that.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions about that? Okay, hearing none. Board committee reports. Legislative, that is Mr. Leftwich, who's not here, so no report tonight. Policy. Mr. Abate, anything going on?
Not at the moment. No, pretty slow for policy.
Okay, finance, Mr. Schwegler.
Well, you heard the biggest part of our meeting's discussion. Lisa, is it okay, or Stacy, is it okay to share ballpark of what you had mentioned today in the email?
Yeah, they're just ballpark estimates. But
Okay, so one of the questions we had asked Stacy to provide is really, what does this add to our fund balance? That's what we really want to know. What's the net impact to our budget? And even accounting for the very nice and well-deserved large raise the teachers are going to get per the contract as a result of the increase, it should still leave us with just over $750,000 extra on top of the fund balance from what we were projecting. So a little bit more wiggle room, and hopefully, if we do well in terms of student enrollment, it'll give us an opportunity to really invest back into this district. So
It's good news.
Just one correction, Mr. Schwegler, if we use the term additional as opposed to extra.
yes, additional. It's not. I'm sure there's lots of places to spend it. Yes.
Okay, facilities and grounds, Mr. Tell.
Yes, so at our last meeting, we got a rundown of projects that are in process. The turf over at East, some playground, parking projects, as well as projects that are currently in design that they're forecasting to go out for bids at some point this fall, which I forgot my notebook, so there are many. It's somewhat similar to the presentation that we had at our last meeting. So if you want to look back at some specifics, it really didn't change from our last board presentation meeting. But they're making good progress. We're seeing lots of progress around the district, so people will hopefully get excited about seeing the improvements around our district.
And if I recall, the most visible ones right now are going to be parking lot projects and playgrounds.
Yep.
And the turf at East.
Yeah, and the turf, well, if you drive down to the field.
Yeah.
Curriculum.
Anyone following us on social media will begin getting updates throughout the summer.
Yep, we've been seeing those. Those are nice to see. Mr. Kennedy, curriculum and communications.
We've not met. Nothing new to report.
Okay, item D is other.
If I may, Mr. President,
Absolutely.
I'd just like to take the opportunity, and I'll go through this as concisely as I can. We have certainly been getting a lot of inquiries in the office about what our plans are for the fall, and we've laid it out for folks in a relatively general format. And our plan from now is we have a rough plan sketched out. I'd like to highlight that for the board tonight to give you the opportunity to either make any questions you might have or additional thoughts for us to consider before we put the formal plan out to the community and to the staff. It will be communicated prior to the work, the first week of August at the absolute latest. And again, I know folks are anxious to have the information. The board is not required to approve the extended continuity of learning plan and our mode of instruction as they did last year. Both the MDHHS and the CDC have released key prevention strategies that they want schools to consider for the coming school year. Important to point out that this is guidance and not mandates. Both agencies are encouraging school districts to make decisions based on their communities and their local information. For us, the best example of this would be in May, when as a board we decided to, or as a district, we decided to allow students the opportunity to test out of quarantine with a negative PCR test. That was something that we were permitted to do and did based on what our case information was, and quarantine information was telling us as a district, and that seemed to serve us well. Case counts in our boundaries within Oakland County are probably the lowest they have been over the summer compared to the past year. And roughly 70% of Oakland County, of those who are eligible to be vaccinated, according to their website, are fully vaccinated. We know from our previous experience last school year, we have a lot of infrastructure and processes and procedures in place. Things are certainly in a very favorable spot right now. We don't want them to go back to where they both before. We want to work towards normalcy, but we'll always have to keep in the back of our mind, having the flexibility, the ability to, I won't say go backwards, but to respond to the current circumstances if need be. But again, we are moving forward with steps towards normalcy for next year. I've broken these things down into about 6 or 7 categories. I'll cover them relatively quickly. And after each one, if the board has questions or comments, maybe that's probably the best way to go through it. So the first one is pathways. We all know we were offering 2 pathways. Families can choose 100% virtual or 100% in-person. Both pathways are 5 full days. The opportunity to change pathways will occur at the end of the first semester. So any questions on pathways? I think that one's, yes, sir. Mr. Schweikman.
Just because it was the elephant in the room over the course of the last school year, so this is 2 choices. Outside of state mandated requirements, does the in-person, 100% in-person, get shifted to anything like what we saw last year, or does it stay 5 days a week unless the state requires something otherwise?
I'll never say never. The first thing would be what mandates we have. If the state were to put out a mandate to require us to go remote, we certainly would do that. My intention would be to stay fully in person, but I don't think we can be blind to the current circumstances, and if they require us to go remote, we'll have to be prepared to make that shift. And again, that's why I'd say we could rely on our experience from last year. It would be for me this year really an absolute last resort to have to do that.
Probably something worse than what we experienced when we decided not to shift course.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure public heard that.
Anything else? Yes.
So for the elementaries, would that, because they're on trimesters, so would that be like a different point because first semester or is it trimester
So
for
we're still planning
elementary?
to do that at the end of secondary's first semester. What we ran into is a number of families have students in both levels, and it did not work for them to switch students at different times. So we ended up having to make some changes at the semester anyway at elementary. For the simplicity of it, we're just saying everybody at the same time in January, rather than having multiple times for elementary and another one for secondary, and then a time where we might have to take elementary students. So everyone will be based off the high school and middle school timeline.
And then my second question to you, because I know that this was brought up by several parents, and maybe it's something we need to look at, is what are the legal implications for not following a mandate that we don't agree with? So maybe we could look at getting an opinion on that, but that was a concern that people had, were what are the implications if it's not law and it's a health department mandating something, do they have the power to do that? And what would our implications be if our numbers don't match at all with what they're saying and it doesn't make sense for our community?
If there's a lawful mandate or requirement from, again, one of the federal, local, state health agencies, we will follow it. So we're not going to go against what we're lawfully required to do, whether we agree with it or not. Isn't, I don't feel we have a choice, or I won't be recommending that we don't follow it. That being said, the guidance as we go through any guidance that comes out or recommendations, we should have as a administration a rationale for either why we are or why we aren't following it based on our local conditions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm not sure if it was said clearly, but I'll ask the question just to make sure it is said clearly, is that when you're talking about mandates, it'll be the requirements that we are following, if they're, call it lawful requirements versus recommendations. Those are, we were gonna look on a case-by-case basis to see if they fit our district in the conditions we have, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I guess the one other thing I'll point out with that is that towards the end of the last year, we saw the MDHHS starting to push some of that stuff down to the local health departments. And Oakland County never put a public health order in place, but Washtenaw County did, which is my understanding kind of has the weight of an official order, which could add a complication to things, or it's just another source for a, call it a lawful order to come from.
Thank you for that information and clarification. Regarding masks, this might be the million-dollar question, but at this point with masks, as you know, that mandate was rescinded on June 22nd. Since then, in our district and our summer programs and all our buildings, masks have been optional. Our plan is to start the school year with masks optional. Again, the only caveat to that is, it's my understanding currently that masks are required on public transportation, which does include school buses, and that's by order of the CDC. So if that should change and not be an order, then we would have them be optional on buses as well. But at this point, they're optional in our classrooms and required on buses. I was over at the high school just yesterday, and our students involved in the summer experience there, and some students had masks on and some students did not, and they seem to be going about their business just fine. So, questions regarding masks? The next category would be testing for the purpose of screening. There's been some talk or conversation out there about the state implementing a testing program of sorts, and staff or students could be tested as often as twice a week. And districts would administer this at their own expense. The test would be free. I have no intention of participating in a voluntary testing program for the purpose of screening. So that won't be something that we will be doing. If, like we did last year, there's a need or the opportunity to bring in a group like we did at the end of spring break, and there's some benefit to that, and have voluntary testing and a one-time opportunity like that, you know, that certainly is an option that we could consider. But in terms of a regular screening program, we will not be participating in that.
So at this point, it's purely voluntary if a district or a school wants to do that. There's no mandate from the state right now saying we must test students twice a week or
That's
any
correct.
kind of on-schedule testing. There's nothing that's saying you must.
That's correct. We've had the opportunity to test staff on a voluntary basis going back as far as February, I believe. I'm honestly not aware of many districts that took advantage of that.
Now, has the MDHHS even offered that to schools at this point, or is that just?
It is not. It was talked about early in the summer, you know, that was circulating around some of the social media and other sites, and in any communication that's come out since late June, I have not heard mention of that. It is in the CDC strategies that they recommend, but in terms of a formal program, we've not had anything shared with us. The next category would be vaccinations. Currently, there is no requirement for students or staff to be vaccinated against COVID-19 in order to return to school. We will respect and honor that. That is an individual decision, and all the guidance and recommendation out there is not to do anything that could potentially stigmatize individuals against, you know, those who are or those who aren't vaccinated. So we will do our level best to honor and respect that, leave it an individual decision. We certainly will not segregate students or staff based on their vaccination status. It will not be, I think the recommendation is even to promote it. I'm not even comfortable doing that, as I feel that may put undue influence on individuals if, as a district, we're promoting it. So we will be mute with respect to vaccines and leave that as an individual decision.
And we're not even asking who's vaccinated, or whether it's faculty, staff, students. We're just,
That's
they
correct.
come in the building, and if they've got the shot, great. If not, they don't. We don't know. We don't have a clue, and we're not asking, correct?
That's correct. The next one, this next section, there's just 3 more to go. In our classrooms and schools, again, the gathering restrictions were rescinded, so we will not be cohorting at this point at the start of the year for the elementary schools. We'll remove the plastic barriers in classrooms. We'll resume the 6-period day at the middle school and the high school. We'll resume eating lunch in the cafeterias at all levels. Our schools were they were lonely places at times this year, and so we'll be welcoming parents and visitors back to our buildings. We'll certainly ask folks to do their own self-screening prior to coming in case they're symptomatic or ill, and ask them to avoid coming in if they are, but parents and visitors will be permitted to back into our buildings following our pre-COVID protocols. Mitigation strategies that we will continue in place. Again, masks are optional, and there is certainly plenty of information out there to support that masks do protect the wearer. Our HVAC system, and I don't want to talk too much over my head on this one, we will continue to maintain it as we did last year, and that was with the, is it MERV 13? Thank you. The MERV 13 filter, adjusting our run times to maximize our fresh air and turnover in our rooms. Our daily cleaning protocols, we'll look to keep those in place. Hand washing will continue to be stressed. We won't be cleaning desks at the end of every class change like we did this year, but hand sanitizer and cleaning supplies will be available in classrooms and throughout the buildings. That was one of the things when we went to our student focus groups. They kind of liked having those things available and asked us to keep that there so that they can wash their hands or sanitize. So that'll be available in classrooms and throughout our common areas. And we will discourage, not necessarily policing it, but discouraging individuals from sharing food and drink and anything that makes it transmission of potential illness really of any kind increases that. So we'll certainly discourage that. And then lastly, our screening, self-screening. The screening I was talking about earlier was testing and trying to identify cases or symptomatic or positive people in advance. This screening is the verbal screening, or that we did on the Google form prior to the year. We'd go through the symptoms. We'll ask staff and students, we'll encourage them to self-screen regarding symptoms prior to reporting to school on each day. We'll encourage individuals to stay home if they're ill. That's certainly good advice under any circumstances. We will encourage individuals who are symptomatic to be tested. If you're tested, you'll be asked to remain out until you either have a negative result or you've served the 10 days or the requisite quarantine period for someone who is positive or symptomatic. Close contacts. At this point, we are not planning to do close contact tracing when we have positive cases. So if we have a case on a bus, in a classroom, or in a school, we'll send out a general communication to that classroom or on the bus so that parents and students can monitor their own symptoms. And so we'll communicate it that way. We will not be quarantining students at this point because they were identified as a close contact. Let me look at my notes here to make sure I'm not missing something important. Positive cases, it's a communicable disease. We are required to report any positive cases that we know of to the Oakland County Health Department or the appropriate health department within 24 hours, so we will certainly comply with that requirement. And a couple miscellaneous things, I mentioned that one, so I don't need to cover that. Again, we will follow all mandates or lawful requirements, and we'll reevaluate as we move through the year, you know, given our local conditions and given any additional guidance that might come out. And before we take any more questions, I'll just look back to my trusted colleagues on cabinet and see, did I miss anything? Okay. I did not pay them to say that I got everything, but good to hear. So again, the plan is, and this is, you're hearing this for the first time publicly tonight, would be to give you some time either to ask some more questions today, or if there's anything that you want us to look into. We will begin sharing some of this information out to get feedback from our bargaining groups and administrators and so forth over the course of the next few days, and then look to share a final version with the community final, what's really final these days, to share our plan with families no later than the first week in August.
When you were talking about something, it brought up, at the elementary schools, when it was all segregated for the playground and they put up those like metal poles, some of those have broken off at some of the schools, and they're like half impaled into the ground, and it's maybe, you know, a potential
Thank
risk.
you for
So if we
sharing that.
could
We'll
look at
work to
those
get
and
those
like
removed.
removing those. I noticed just from playing being at the different baseball fields.
You didn't break them, did you?
No, they were broken there.
Just checking.
You know, I wanted to create more work for everybody.
Thank you for pointing that out. We'll be sure.
And I know
to-
they're still up at Hardy, so if we're, you know, I don't know if we're going to need them or we're thinking okay,
So,
perfect.
yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We
Okay.
certainly don't want any kind of a safety hazard on our playground.
Yeah, I know for sure there was some broken at Pearson.
Thank you.
So last year, Oakland County provided the extra nurses to help through all this COVID. Is that still something that Oakland County is doing this year, or for any time, like if we get numerous students, you know, affected, are they there to help, or is it just back onto us?
Thank you. It's a great question. They are not, and I'll comment that we were extremely grateful to the Oakland County Commissioners for making the nurses available. Artemis and Caroline were just outstanding to resources to have. So while they won't be, we put a position into the budget, and we'll be adding a nurse as a district employee to assist us at least through this year.
Right.
And with any luck, it's one of those two individuals. Sorry, that probably compromises the whole hiring process, but. I'm not sure why I'm being so light today. Maybe it's summer. My tie's too tight. Anything else? And again, I would add to the board, because this is not something that you have to vote on, I will share this information with you electronically, and feel free to either respond additional thoughts or questions that you might have over the next couple days. Ideally, when we put this communication out to our staff and community, we want it to be very clear and concise, but really answer all their questions in one communication as best we can. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Archibald. Any other? Nope, I think we're good. Okay, item number 14, reports, South Lyon Education Foundation, Mr. Abate.
I got an update if you want me to
Go
take
ahead.
it.
Yeah, please,
Okay.
please.
So SLEF, they are working with the library right now to collect gently used books that will go into our classroom. So they're going to help teachers get books that they need. So if anyone has those in the community, it's been on social media, but we're working on collecting those to, you know, help the classroom libraries out. They are continuing to work on those kindergarten welcome bags. We've gotten some large sponsors, Gateway Dental, British Swim School, Novi Sports Club, Kiwanis, and a number of other businesses. So it's going to be a tremendous gift to all the kindergartners coming in. They're getting things, journal, books, scissors, crayons, Play-Doh, dry erase markers, stickers. So they're still looking for sponsors. So if anyone is interested, please reach out to the South Lyon Educational Foundation.
Thank you. Item number 15 is our second opportunity for public comments. Is there anybody who'd like to make a public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to item 16, correspondence. We had a number of resignations this month. We wish those educators well as they move on, and also one retirement. Mrs. Huffman. Item number 17 is our meeting dates for the next year. They're all listed there. All of them are Tuesdays with the exception of one at the end of the school year. And that brings us to item 18, board comments. Mr. Abate, do you want to go first?
I'll just congratulate Christina. I'm excited about that choice. Got to work with her back when I was at Centennial. Great teacher, great person. Is going to do really well in that role, undoubtedly. So that was an exciting moment for us, I think. Yeah, I hope everybody's having a good summer, and I'm excited to hear that we are heading into the fall looking as normal as can be expected, I think, all things considered. So that's it.
Mrs. Younkless-Pierce?
I too will like to congratulate Ms. Cibriario. It's great that we're filling a lot of these positions and with some great talent. So I'm glad that those positions are all being filled because we've had a lot of movement. So that's great to see. You brought up the 2 Oakland County nurses. I would truly like to thank them for all of their help. I'm pretty sure this district probably could not have done what it did this year without that invaluable help. And thank you, Mr. Archibald, for the information. I think that will go a long way to the community and helping them feel comfortable to hopefully, keep their children in the district and bring children back who may have left. So great work to you and your team on the plan.
Thank you. Mr. Swigova?
Yes, ditto. Congratulations to Christine. I do want to say thank you to Pamela Huffman for her years of service. I'm sure she's probably looking forward to her retirement. And yeah, I'm going to also ditto that comment as well. I think that the plan laid out is well thought out. I appreciate that you are allowing an opportunity for those to digest it and to maybe ask some questions so that we can hopefully be proactive with any curveballs that may come our way this year instead of reacting, which I'm sure wasn't super fun last year. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Mrs. Zertel?
I'd also like to say congratulations to Ms. Sabario. My daughter had her for 4th grade and 6th grade math, and she was the assistant coach for the high school golf team. So I will say that it's again, another double-edged sword. Excellent that she's moving up, but also very sad because she's a fantastic teacher and great with the kids. I was excited to see of another retirement. I'm a little sad on that one because it's another German teacher. So we got a lot of German teachers to fill, and I know that's probably going to be a challenge. So, and I hope everyone's having a great summer so far. Oh. I better
Really
text
bad,
home,
really
make sure
bad
the windows
storms.
are closed.
Really?
Thunderstorm warning, trees falling down in Milford, in case you were wondering. Kids are freaking out. That's all.
Text the house and close the windows.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy?
That said, I'll be brief. Congratulations, Christine. Good to have you. Congratulations to our folks that have retired and moved on. We wish them well. Let's enjoy the rest of our summer, yes?
Very much so. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to wrap it up, again, I'll say congratulations to Mrs. Sabario. Good luck to those that are moving on, and congratulations to Ms. Huffman for her retirement. I hope she enjoys it, and that is all I have. I hope everyone enjoys their summer. Before you know it, we'll be back talking about back to school. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Youngquist Pierce, second by Mr. Abate. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0. Meeting is adjourned at 7:39. No, but my son should be sitting out in the parking lot with one right now.
Son Cabinet, who had some concerns about whether we were gonna get some growing from parents if we had.
Thank you, sir.